Hello, this is Natsuya, and today we're going to talk a little bit about anorexia. So, what is anorexia? It is basically starving yourself to death. Bulimia is binging and purging, and there's some other eating disorders, not so much identified or whatever the term, EDNOS, whatever the term is. I was first diagnosed with anorexia when I was 19. And at that point in time, I just didn't want to eat anything. It wasn't like I was exercising all the time or whatever. I just wasn't eating. Because, even today, it's like if I don't have to eat, I just wouldn't, because I find it annoying. Even though food, it's necessary for life, so you have to eat something. But, I'm used to fasting or, getting into an ADHD mood and wanting to create something and then forgetting to eat. And I do that sometimes. But I call it the anorexia monster. It's that voice in your head that talks to you that says, you're this, you're that, you're whatever, you're ugly, you're fat, you're whatever, and it takes over your mind. And I will always be a recovering anorexic. I think last week sometime, there were like 2 or 3 days I went without eating any food and I just didn't care. And that's just kind of how it goes. Now, a lot of times we focus on anorexia in girls and females, and we don't focus on anorexia in males or anorexia in the LGBT and non-binary androgynous community. And a lot of times anorexia goes along with gender dysphoria. And I know with me, I didn't know exactly what was going on, but a lot of it was, I was dealing with some gender dysphoria, body dysmorphia, whatever, backlash, and I didn't know what it was. Because at the time, they just didn't talk about it. We talked about drag queens, we talked about gay, we talked about lesbians, we talked about bisexual, but we didn't really talk about, non-binary or trans or whatever, intersex or whatever else. So I always knew that was, I'm intersex, so hey, it's part of how it is. And so I've been, in industries that your appearance is very important, and it's it's part of who you are. Now I know as of late, last couple of years, I haven't really, I don't really care. I don't need to wander around and be all fabulous all the time. I enjoy getting dressed up or not, and just kind of going with the flow. But hey, I figured I wanted to do my hair, so I just got it cut yesterday. So I usually don't do that, but hey, I usually cut it myself. But hey, I wanted to get it cut, so we did. I had some things coming up that I'm gonna enjoy doing, and so I thought it was necessary. So going back to anorexia, anorexia warps your sense of seeing who you are, how you present, or what how the world views you. And you don't usually see yourself, because the anorexia monster, even when I was at my worst, lowest weight, I would stand up and fall down. And I had to go to the hospital, and they were going to put me on a feeding tube and all that kind of stuff, and that in and of itself, if you're an anorexic and they tell you feeding tube, that's one of the most scary things on the face of the planet. You don't want that. No. But being in an eating disorder clinic, is a thing. And it's an experience, and you have to learn how to eat. And I know that, sometimes I still to this day will be a recovering anorexic and will always have issues with food and eating, and it's just part, like if I have too much food, like I need to make sure that like the cupboards are bare and that there's not too much food, you know, in my head. Luckily I have food, so I'm grateful for that, you know, so I have nothing to complain about because it's readily accessible and I have, you know, I can buy it. But there are people in this world who, you know, go without eating for days or nights, or, you know, the parent doesn't eat so their kids can, you know. So when I was at my height of anorexia, I kind of reframed it a little bit as a challenge and an experience. But I will always forever be a recovering anorexic, and it will be something that I'll always have to deal with. And so I know, to me, you know, I can't cook. I just can't, okay? And, you know, having ADHD and autism, I know that if something takes a long time to prepare, that it's going to be an issue. And so, things that I like to do, because I'm also vegetarian vegan, is, you know, have dried fruit and, you know, oranges and bananas and apples, and fruit and vegetables, and, you know, eat raw stuff. You know, I try not to eat food with preservatives. I know a lot of times that there are places with food deserts. I know that that's also an issue, that sometimes you just can't get, you know, fresh vegetables. They're not anywhere to get them, you know. So I have nothing to complain about, and so, you know, it would be hypocritical of me to say, you know, whatever. But, you know, I know that anorexia is about control. And I know that I grew up and had narcissistic parents, and so as my way of controlling stuff when I was a teenager, it was so I could control my food intake when I went to college, because there was no one there to like send you to detention or, you know, put you, you know, whatever, you didn't have to go to class. And so as a method of control, I could control my food because that was the only thing I could control in the environment. And I know it gives you a weird relationship to food, ever having an eating disorder or being anorexic. And I'll always carry that with me. And I know recently, you know, I haven't wanted to eat, you know. You know, if I didn't have to eat ever again, I never would. But, you know, you're human. You have to eat. It's part of the plan, you know. I also know that I've had my food poisoning. So, besides that, you know, that also turns you off wanting to eat. You know, and so I think that eating disorders should be more front and center, especially now, because they are part of mental health, and, you know, you are what you eat. And so if you're eating junk or nothing or, you know, whatever, you know, that's going to affect your brain and how you think and how you concentrate, you know. And, you know, do you have enough energy to exercise? Do you have enough energy? Does your brain have the chemicals it needs to think? So it's just a little bit I wanted to say about anorexia, that it is a real thing, and that it does happen in both females and males, and in those who are non-binary, and it can be a huge deal. And I know that when I was at my lowest weight, where I would stand up and I would faint, or I would go in an elevator and I would faint, you know, that's no joke. And I remember at the hospital, they said, when I checked in for anorexia at age 19, they were like, if you hadn't been here in another week, you'd be dead. You know, so it is a real thing, and it needs to be taken seriously. And so it's no joke. So So there's anorexia, there's bulimia, there are other eating disorders. You know, there's eating disorders when you're diabetic. That can even be even worse. You know, and so those need to be taken into consideration. But eating disorders affect, you know, males as well as females, as well as people who are non-binary. And especially if you're in the trans community and passing is an issue, or passing is something that you're pressured into, or you feel that there's pressure from society, you know, just for your safety also, that can be an issue. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that today. So thank you for this rambling. You know, I just wanted to say anorexia exists in females, males, and the non-binary community, and it should be taken seriously, and you are what you eat. So, peace.